Right. What up, though, people? It is your boy, Detroit Kool-Aid, and this is Woodward Pistons, and you know I'm rocking out with Mr. Everything over here. He's gotten upgraded, man. We talked about, this is the summer of being buffed up, man. This guy definitely has been upgraded. He's on every show, it seems like. Mr. Everything, Jeff Freddie. And we have a special guest with us today. His name, Mike Curtis of the Detroit News. He is the beat writer for the Pistons, for the Detroit News of the Pistons. Mike, we're going to get into you a little bit after.
We do the annual drum roll.
There we go.
We got to do the drum roll for Rod here.
Listen, man, Rod is a legend. He tries to deny the notion. He really does. But he's in denial. I don't think he understands his impact, not just in the Pistons community, but just in the basketball world, in the sports world, and just as a good person in general. He's brought a positive light to social media. The Pistons have not been good, no surprise, through like the tenure of, Rod. He covered a little bit better than Vince Ellis, who covered the buffoonery years. Bless Vince's soul, man.
God bless him.
But he's just a good person, man. You see what he brings to social media. I can't begin to thank him enough for the different ways he's impacted my life, even before we did stuff like this. So, here Jeff and I, we like to show homage to those that have always been good people, man, whether professionally or just practically. So that's what this drum roll represents. I'm not gonna let him push off those notions. So let's get it going, Jeff. Hey, yo, to the legend Detroit News, Rod Beard. Welcome to the show. Definitely. Now, Mike,
thank you.
Tell the people a little about yourself, man, before we get going.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for having me. It's really cool to be on Woodward Sports. It's really early. I'm not an early bird, but I guess this is going to give me a little preparation for those early flights that I'm going to have to take later this season. A little bit about myself. I'm a Saginaw native. So I'm just an hour and some change down the road. I went to Tennessee State University for undergrad, graduated from Middle Tennessee State University for my master's degree. And my whole background is sports journalism, basketball. I've always loved the NBA. It was always like a goal of mine to cover the NBA. So to do it close to home, covering the team that I grew up watching, it's kind of a dream come true for me. So I'm just excited to be here, and I'm ready to get to work.
Hey, that's awesome, man. And you know what? You said a couple schools there that I actually have some connections to through some families. My cousin, Cedric Dent Jr., actually graduated from Tennessee State in journalism. And
Nice.
My uncle Cedric Dent Sr., is actually in the music department at Middle Tennessee State. So that's pretty cool, man. Definitely shout out to those schools. I love what Middle Tennessee State is doing. I really do. They're surrounded by some pretty big schools, but they make such a powerful impact in the different programs in the lives of the people that are there. So definitely, man, shout out to you. I know you got a good pedigree. That's the word that I love to use. And, Rod, he spoke glowingly about you, very, very glowingly. He said, Mike is a guy who just fit every single checkbox. All the marks you wanted, he had it. He was thoroughly prepared, and he said that you showed up with questions for him. You showed up with questions for whoever was interviewing you. Like, look, I'm ready. I'm a journalist, right? This is what I do. So I was like, you know what? That's what's up, man. I like where the basketball community is going here in Detroit, and I'm glad to at least from our Woodward Sports and Woodward Pistons family, definitely welcome you, man.
No, I appreciate that. It's funny you mentioned that interview because like even before I came on to the show, like I asked you, like, what topics are we going to be discussing? Yeah. I want to make sure I'm as prepared as possible. But yeah, that's my thing. I always like to be a little bit over prepared, but it's kind of good to freestyle a little bit every now and then.
Dope. Jeff, you have anything for him? Because I know that you and Mike, you guys have actually already been on a podcast together.
Yeah, he hopped on from half court. So shout out to Mike for that, man. We had a blast doing that. But I wanted to ask you too, just being able to cover your hometown team. Like, how good of a feeling is that? Because, like, for me, I can't imagine, and I'm sure you'd still enjoy it. I'm not saying you wouldn't. But imagine, being a journalist and going out and cover, let's say, a team like going out to Utah and you're covering the Utah Jazz. Like, what difference between covering a team like Utah and covering a team that you know so well and you grew up on?
Yeah, I think that's the advantage right there. Like, the history of the team. You're able to pinpoint exact moments, maybe the best in the franchise's history, maybe the worst in the franchise's history. I think when I think about the time when I grew up watching the Pistons, obviously the 2004 championship is one that a lot of Pistons fans can identify with. But then I also think about the 2005 finals when they lost to San Antonio and how much that kind of hurt Pistons fans like around the state. So I think I can identify with a lot of just the history and nostalgia of the franchise. Whereas if I was to go to another city, another location and cover a different team, I think there would be a bit of a larger learning curve where I would have to get acclimated to the team's history and the key players and everything that kind of what they mean to that franchise. So I think that's the biggest difference.
That's something very, very interesting because, we sit here in a position where it's Pistons all the time. Do we look at other teams? Yes. And sometimes we'll make statements that those other fan bases, they'll be like, what? No, you're missing this key component, or you're missing this intrinsic value, or you're missing this historical context. And so I 100% get it. We kind of deal with that a little bit with the whole Cade Cunningham thing, how we get to see our guys. We're going to know all the ins and the outs, all the warts, all the goods, all the bads. And it makes personally covering a team, it's something much more natural, I guess.
Yeah.
It feels like the same thing we've done our whole lives. From an unbiased standpoint, when we're talking about it with our friends, there is no bias. Now, obviously, when we start talking about it with fans of other teams and things of that nature, we tend to get a little bit more defensive. But as it relates to this, we sit down and we'll get into the Pistons and talk about what do they need to do to get better, because that's what we all want. Mm-hmm. Now, I know as we get closer to the season, I know you guys said you can't see us, but obviously the Pistons hat, Pistons shirt, those things got to go into the closet. We'll be in more of an official capacity as the season rolls around. During the summer, I've decided, you know what? Pistons, Detroit Kool-Aid all summer, man. All summer. That's my vacation from it. But when we get into it, yeah, it's different. And it's cool to be able to have that background, that perspective. So I hope it helps you a ton. I really do. And I'm glad that it's something that gives you a little bit of a foundation as you start off in your first season covering the Detroit Pistons. But
I appreciate that.
Let's get in.
Really quick, I just wanted to, I know you said a couple of words earlier, but I definitely just wanted to thank Rod publicly. He's helped me a lot since I started. I wouldn't be in this position without him. He's he paved the way. And I'm just trying to walk into his footsteps and do the best job I can. So big shout out to Rod Beard.
And that's what's up.
See, that's my guy. I appreciate
that's what's
y'all.
up.
See, everybody's showing love to Rod,
too, man.
Yeah, I really, I'm excited for you, Mike. I really am, dude. I mean, you're not only a good person, but I know you do great work. And it's funny you say you over prepare, because I feel the same. I'm the same exact way here at Woodward Sports. Like sometimes I feel like I prepare too much, and I have to almost be like, all right, Jeff, you're overthinking a lot of things, but it's good to be like that. So I'm really excited for you, man. And it's a good year to do it too, because this team is on the their stock is rising. So it's a great time to do it.
And that's what we're here to talk about. Look, we saw the Cleveland Cavaliers make a big jump, man. We really did. And we're going to get into that. One of the things that they did this year to try and bolster that jump is they traded for Donovan Mitchell, which is just like, okay. I think when the trade first went down, initially I was like, I don't know if it was shocked. I wasn't necessarily crazily impressed. I didn't know how much this really, really made their team go forward, but I do believe that it bolsters the success that they showed. They improved by almost 26 games from 2020-21 to the 2021-22 season. The additions that they made were Jared Allen, Evan Mobley.
Yeah, they drafted Evan.
Yep, they drafted Evan Mobley. Those were the two key or the biggest additions they made, and the impact where it was felt the most for that team was on the defensive side. Now they go and they, I believe, make a slight upgrade at the guard position. I'll let you guys bear that out with Donovan Mitchell. And I do believe it solidifies the Cavs as a solid contender for right now. Do we have to, and I don't know what people's expectations were for the Pistons coming into the season, but do we have to change any aspect of our expectations for this team after the Donovan Mitchell trade? Or does this sale just kind of keep going on the way that we thought it was going to go?
I want to get Mike and Rod's input on this, and I'm just going to say my theory on it, and then I want to hear what you guys have to say. Personally, when the trade got announced and seeing what Cleveland did, I'm not really shocked. I mean, I'm shocked they're in our division, but I'm not shocked that the Cleveland Cavaliers went out and made this move, because Pistons fans have to understand this. The Cleveland Cavaliers are at least a year ahead of where we are. Like, they made the postseason with the team that, mostly they drafted, a lot of guys they acquired, and now they've realized, all right, we don't just want to make the postseason. We want to make the postseason, but we want to try and make an NBA Finals. So that's why you go out and trade for a guy like Donovan Mitchell. In my opinion, the Pistons are at the point right now where they have to figure out what they have. And I'm not talking about Cade Cunningham. I'm talking about the other guys. Like, realizing who's staying and what guys you like. You got to see Jaden Ivey in his rookie year. I think once the Pistons make the playoffs, whether it's next season, whatever it is, the season after that, you're going to know when the time is to go out and try and trade for a guy like Donovan. I don't know who that'll be, but I just think it's too early. So for Pistons fans that, if this changes your expectations, it shouldn't. I mean, Troy Weaver, the offseason, all the moves he's done, or the lack thereof, really, should tell you what he expects out of this season. They expect him to go out there, just see what you have in your team. I mean, they're going to learn to play together. I don't think they're going to be world beaters this year. The East is extremely tough, and now you add Donovan Mitchell to a Cleveland Cavaliers team who, to be honest with you, I thought was going to be middle of the pack in the East. Even with Donovan, the East is so tough, they might still be middle of the pack in the East, if not, a top 5 team. So that's kind of my theory, is the Pistons, I think, are about a year behind, if not a little more, than the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they'll ultimately get there, but it doesn't change my expectations, because they still have to let these guys go out and play and just learn to play together. See what you have and see if you need to make a move. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have what you need, but until then, I think it's just a little too early to freak out as a Pistons fan.
Yeah, and I asked that, do we need to adjust expectations? Because there are some who believe, I've heard some people say, we're not building fast enough. We're not going out there and getting the pieces that are impactful enough. And I'm just like, I don't understand that. We're drafting really, really, really good players, and we're moving at a pace that Troy Weaver stated would be at the pace of restoration, not at the pace of the fans, not at the pace of just to do it fast or to do it slow. He said we're going to do this thing the right way. Yeah. And who are they going to go out there and just sign? It's just not there. Obviously, next year, the way that everything stacks up with the certain roster decisions they'll have to make, the financial flexibility they'll have with the cap sheet and such,
right?
That's when they're going to be able to be major players. Now, if the players themselves this year on the team decide or show or prove that, hey, we're actually ahead, then that's honestly, to me, the perfect storm.
Right.
If you're going to lose that draft pick, at least be able to have the capital, the cap space, to be able to still add some high level talent to your team, and have it not really affect your actual roster. And then I've heard fans that think because the Cavs have done this and the East have gotten so stacked that we just need to go into tank mode. And so I'm just sitting here like, well, we were just sitting here believing, we see it from the comments, we see it on social media, we see it on other shows, right, other podcasts, we see what people are stating. They were just believing we were supposed to be competing for the play-in. And so that's why I'm just saying, with this trade, does it change really anybody's previous expectation, or do we still believe, within a year or two, this team should be in a position to firmly compete for playoffs? And we'll throw it to you, Mike, before we get it over to the legend over there.
Yeah, I don't think this changes anything about the expectations of what this team is capable of, simply because I think the Cavs were already a couple of spots better than where the Pistons are right now, even before the Donovan Mitchell trade. I thought they were going to be contending for maybe that 7th, 8th spot. With the addition of Donovan Mitchell, I think they can finish anywhere from 5th to 8th. But I think they'll definitely be in that latter half of the playoff picture as far as the East goes. As far as Detroit, they have to focus on getting better every day and winning more than 23 games than they did last season. Anything more than that will be an improvement, and I think a step in the right direction. My projection for this team is probably around 33, 34 games, which could net them a spot in the play-in tournament. I think last season, the final team was around that win mark as well. So I don't think we should change our expectations. I think this team is kind of going at the pace that it wants to go. It just, like you said, it just depends on where the players are going to be by the time the season ends. And sometimes teams can make that leap during the season. Sometimes it takes another off season to kind of get acclimated to each other. But I think it's just gonna depend on how quick this team gels, which is when we'll see the real version of it.
That's the key word right there. How quick this team gels.
Yeah,
I believe that they have the nucleus, which is the most important aspect of it. Do they have all of the pieces that they need to be obviously a contender in the East right now? The Pistons, no. But with that nucleus, it's enough to me to, like Mike said, his win total is about where we've been. I think all of us have been around that 30 to 35 win total. And with them being a player potentially, or at least competing for the play-in tournament, I believe that should be something that they should be flirting with all season. That's expectation-wise something that I want to see, regardless of their actual win total. I want to see them being one of those teams that is firmly kind of in the mix, in the talk. I don't want them to be one of those kind of bottom feeder teams, because that doesn't show the progress that we all think that they should be, the step forward they should be making.
and I think because of how tough the East is too, they might get better by let's say 5-6 wins, but the wins, it's only going to be 5-6 wins, but they might look way better just because how tough the East is. So it's hard to base it off, you want them to obviously, like Mike said, you got to win more than 23 games, but you got to see what you have, man. Like, this is the time. It's Saddiq Bey, and we all see how hard he's working and his work ethic, but can he take that next step to be a third option on a winning basketball team? I think he can, but this is the year to go out and just show out your skills. So if Jaden Ivey looks like he's ahead of schedule and he's not a guy that you're going to have to wait 2-3 years on, then yeah, these moves are going to be made. But Cleveland had years to think about this with this core. Like, Cade is going into his second year, and people already want everything. So and I get it. Trust me, as Pistons fans, I get it. But it's just too early. That's all.
Yeah, Rod. Any perspective on this, man, before we get into the numbers of the Cavs?
I got perspectives on this. The first thing, and people who would say,
I love a confident Rod. Go out there, Rod.
The people who would say that the Pistons are going too slow. I mean, it takes. It's like a car. You got to shift your gears and go at the right speed at the right time. When Troy Weaver got here, he dismantled this roster in weeks, and that wasn't too fast at that time. So let that man work, sit in the back seat, and just be a passenger, and let him drive the thing. And then when we get there, then you'll be able to comment on whether it was too fast or too slow. It's kids, man. And Brandon, you know this. Are we there yet?
No.
Are we there yet? Are we there yet? No, we're not there.
And it's just like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get there though. You know it. We got the right driver.
When sometimes you got to be on the freeway. Sometimes you got to take a couple of side streets. You can't get there as quickly as everybody wants to. And that's the first point is it's going to happen when it's going to happen. But no, this team, especially when you trade Jeremy Grant, is not going to be in a position to be that good right now. It's just going to take the evolution of a lot of those guys. And the East is the East. Having Cleveland be a little bit better maybe softens up some of the other teams, gives them a few more L's than they would have had. True. So maybe the top isn't as high and isn't as far away as it would have been. And maybe the bottom I think it may even soften up some of the bottom for the Pistons to maybe sneak into that play-in area. So it could be some good stuff. But you have to like that Cleveland is even going for it. That Kobe Altman just said, you know what, this is the time I'm putting all the chips in the middle of the table, and just snuck in this thing, because this was supposed to be the Knicks thing to lose. This was just, they were going to get Donovan Mitchell, and there wasn't a question about it. This was as sure a thing as them going out and in free agency and getting anybody that they wanted. And that part played out, but they didn't get Donovan Mitchell. So I think it helps the East in that it makes it a little bit stronger, and it's going to make other teams in the next year or two have to dismantle and have to step to the table if they're not going to dismantle it. So maybe it opens the door in 2 years for the Pistons to be where they need to be, because teams just can't keep up. It's sort of this superstar mentality, but it gives the Pistons a roadmap of how to do this too. Is you were going to have to make a decision between Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. You weren't going to be able to keep both of them. Everybody knew that. And so they made their decision and they flipped it into an all-star. That's what you have to do to be competitive in the league now, is value your assets, know when you need to flip them and move on to something else. And when you get an all-star who's available that you can trade for, strike when the iron's hot and do something with it. I think it bodes well, because this is the type of environment that Troy Weaver would succeed in, because these are the rules. This is what you have to do to build a team. And this furthers that agenda and shows you another example of how it can be done.
Bro, Rob brought the heat.
I was going to say, did you not just hear what he just said at the end? He said, you flip your assets. And I think that's something that Pistons fans don't talk enough about, because I think, and I get it, a lot of fans, they have an emotional connection to certain players, but look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. They drafted Colin Sexton in 2018, 8th overall, and he was just flipped for Donovan Mitchell. So that's a reality.
Hey, and think about this. If Altman got Donovan Mitchell for what he got, for the trade package that it was.
Right.
Like, I'm sitting here thinking, I keep sitting here thinking about this. Troy has already done this. He came in fresh off the presses and started trading away people's beloved Bruce Brown and Luke Kennard. And look at the returns he got for those guys.
I know.
What is he getting when he starts flipping his actual draft picks?
I mean, dude,
think about
he
that.
got Marvin Bagley for Josh Jackson and Trey Lyles.
But what if he actually was able to flip Marvin Bagley? What would he get?
I mean,
that's where it gets a little scary, because you see what Kobe Altman was able to do with his draft picks, or with the Cavs higher draft picks. It's like oh man. Yeah, in about a year or two, this team should be in prime position, and what Troy has given himself is an opportunity, almost like the architect in The Matrix, to see everything and to have every single possible option at his peril. Like, he gets to decide: do I want to spend money? Do I want to?
What's our word of the summer? Flexibility.
Flexibility.
That's what Troy's been doing. Yeah, I love it.
Does he want to sign guys? Does he want to trade for guys? Does he want to trade and sign for guys? $60 million is a lot of money, man.
Yeah, he's the chef and he's shopping for his own groceries. So he's cooking and he's buying the groceries. So you gotta love it.
So it really is, kids. Just sit in the back seat, be quiet. We'll be there when we get there. And just leave that man alone. Let him drive.
Mm-hmm. And I think you got one more thing to say?
No, I got to head out just because the show starts today. Yeah, but I want to say this was, even though I was only here for 20, 30 minutes, this was a lot of fun, guys, and I appreciate you guys joining. Hopefully we do this soon, because this was a blast. But until then, I appreciate you, fellas.
Yep.
Always appreciate it.
As a preset.
Thank you.
We definitely got to say this as a preset. All right, and I got your back.
Thank you, sir. But yeah, with the Cavs, I wanted to kind of get into their numbers, the jump they made, because I believe that their improvements were seen before we saw the actual wins. We look at the 22-50 record in 2020 and 2021, but we saw that they had some pretty talented players on their roster. If they were trying to lose by design, or if they were just kind of running the young players and letting them make their mistakes, knowing that would also lead to the same kind of result that the GM would probably need to move this team forward. I'm not going to parse that, but I do believe they had a lot more talent on their team than 22 wins, which is, this year, if the Pistons so happen to not get to 30 to 35, I do believe that the talent would have dictated that they could have gotten that. But they put themselves in a position to where all they had to do was sign Jared Allen and draft an Evan Mobley. That took this team from 22-50 to 44-38. And the biggest jump was seen in their defense. Their defensive rating went from 114.4 in 2020 and 2021, and they were 25th in the league, all the way to 7th in the league at 109.7. That's huge. That's a huge jump in just one season. And obviously that tandem that they had down low played a huge part, because I wasn't necessarily impressed with their with the defense from their guards, from their perimeter play. The other numbers of note here, their expected win-loss was 18-54 in 2020 and 2021. But with the additions they made, though Vegas had them still at 26.5 wins, up from 22.5 wins from 21 to 22, their expected win-loss based on the moves they made had them at 47-35, just about where they landed, which is just interesting. You don't generally see a team go, even though they have it on paper, you don't generally see them add 22 wins over a course of a season with those additions. Because it's not like they went out last year and made a signing of a Donovan Mitchell then. I didn't think Jared Allen was a Donovan Mitchell, but on the defensive side, it seems like he had a bigger impact on that team than Donovan Mitchell may have on the offensive side for the Cavs. So it'll be interesting to see how this team goes. But it raised a couple questions for me personally. Is this Pistons young core, like outside of Donovan Mitchell, is the Pistons young core as talented as the Cleveland Cavaliers young core?
No.
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 That's a simple
I
answer.
think, yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
think
Wade.
you can definitively say, I think you can definitively say no, just because there are a lot of unknowns we haven't seen with this Pistons young core. They just got 2 lottery picks in Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. They haven't even played their first NBA games yet, but we're already putting them as, well, I don't want to say we're putting them on a pedestal, but we're making sure that they're gonna be like key players within the rotation when they haven't even played their first games yet. So I think just because of that, we still need to see more of Killian Hayes to see if he takes that leap in year 3. I think we need to see what Sadiq and what Cade, we can already expect that they're going to bring their game, but we got to see it on the court. And also Marvin Bagley. Where does Kelly Olynyk fit in? He's one of the vets on the team, but we have to see how that's all going to be put together. And what about Isaiah Stewart's transition to shooting the 3-ball more and being on the perimeter? Is that going to mesh well with Marvin Bagley when he's in the game? Excuse me for that. My alarm going off. But is that going to mesh well when he's in the game next to Marvin Bagley? And let's say Stu's not hitting his shots. So that's kind of going to clog up the paint. So I think there's a lot of unknowns that we just don't know yet before we compare it to the young core of the Cavs, who kind of proved that they're all talented. And now you bring in a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who's an offensive juggernaut, pair him with Darius Garland, who is becoming one of the best point guards in the league. I think their backcourt is going to be an offensive weapon, and their front court is going to be a defensive weapon when you throw in Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. So you kind of got the best of both worlds there. I think this Cavs team is in a really good spot, and it's just going to take the Pistons some time to kind of catch up and kind of duplicate that. But they got to find their identity first.
Yeah, man, that's the key word there, the identity, because the Cavs found it, and it is defense. It is definitely defense for them. And when I look at their roster, it's not that, not that we don't know that they're a very, very, very talented team, but when you look at their roster, you get a heavy, heavy sense of it. I mean, they have guys like Karis LeVert and Kevin Love on their squad who are coming off the bench and providing a lot when they play instantly. These are guys who will step into the Pistons rotation and provide a whole lot right now. Would Karis LeVert step in and be ahead of Hamid Diallo on this roster right now? You see what I'm saying? Would he step in right now and be ahead of Isaiah Livers and guys like that? Instantly. Kevin Love, he would instantly step in and be one of our better bigs, unless they just decided we're trying to feature the young players. Now, the Cavs, this is when I look at the players that they have, I'm looking at Jared Allen, Ed Davis, Tim Frazier, Darius Garland, Luke Kornet, Karis LeVert, Kevin Love, Mobley, Isaac Okoro, Seti Osman. This is a team that foundationally, they made sure that they had the right pieces before they moved forward and got a Donovan Mitchell type of guy. It feels like whatever the Cavs are doing, it's cut from the same cloth of whatever Troy Weaver is doing. And that's make sure your foundation is solid. See what you have first, talent, best player available. I mean, they were sitting there with Sexton and Garland, and it's not like they went and traded Sexton for, say, another big. They didn't have to because their front court is solid. They were able to go and say, you know what? We'll roll the dice and go with the double guard look again, similar to the Trailblazers. But I believe in, not necessarily because of the East, but because of the types of players these guys are, I think they have a little bit a better opportunity to have more success than the Portland Trailblazers did with Dame Lillard and oh my goodness, forgetting his name.
CJ McCollum.
Yeah, CJ McCollum. I do. I believe that these guys, like you said, Darius Garland is one of the most underrated just players in the NBA, period. I don't know how you make, an all-star game and you're still underrated, but he is. I don't know how much respect he's necessarily getting in a Cavs uniform. And I believe that obviously with extended wins, he's going to get more of that. But with the Pistons here, I do believe that Ivy and Duren are going to make an impact on this team, but I believe that we are underestimating potentially the additions from the New York Knicks as it relates to the Pistons' young core defensively. As that was the other half of this question I wanted to ask. Do the Pistons have any semblance of the pieces to make the defensive jump that the Cavs made? And I asked that because of the conversation it will bring up. I believe that this team has a long way to go in terms of its big men and its defense. Like I still don't believe that the starting center for a playoff caliber team is on this squad right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get you guys' take on that. The differences in between where the Cavs are at right now defensively and what the Pistons have right now, where they may have to go for them to get there. I love Beef Stew. I love what Isaiah Stewart is doing to transform his game and to make sure he can be impactful in a lot of different ways on the court. But I believe that he has a long way to go defensively before we can talk about making the leaps that the Cavs did. Marvin Bagley, I don't know what he's going to be necessarily defensively. It hasn't necessarily been his strong suit in his start to the NBA. I want to see what he can be, as it's something he's going to be more or less asked to do now. Hey, be a defensive presence. But yeah, what do the Pistons need to do? Both what they have on the roster right now and where you would like to see them go so that they can make the same type of jump defensively that the Cavs have made.
Just in principles, they've got to be more solid in that. And where you say Isaiah Stewart maybe isn't the physical presence in the middle that some other people are, he's that on the perimeter, that he can guard so many other positions, and he can stop some of that penetration from getting in there. So that's why that's the other benefit of moving him to the 4 and playing him with a bigger big is he can help stop some of that penetration from getting there because the guards may not be doing it. And we saw that so much with Corey Joseph, that other guards were able to get around him and create havoc in the paint once they got 2 feet in the paint. So you can do some other things with that. But again, this isn't a finished roster by any stretch of the imagination. You just have to wait until you can get the pieces there. Can Jalen Duren be that guy who is the eraser behind a Stewart so that it lets you do some different things? He's just going to need time to grow. Kid is 18. By the time the season gets really going in November, he'll just be turning 19. So you've just got to wait for him to develop. He's like a green tomato. You just pick him and you put him on the windowsill and you hope that he's going to ripen and to become a better defensive player and understand the NBA game. So again, it's time with everything. It's time. You got to look and see what Killian Hayes is, as Mike said. You got to see whether Nerlens Noel can help you in more than one capacity. What does Isaiah Livers bring? Is he the best defensive presence in that blend of offense and defense that you need on the court at the same time? It's so many different things. They can play with so many different bigs and so many different styles, whether you're putting Livers at the 3 or the 4, whether you're putting Sadiq at the 3 or the 4. How do you fit Stewart in there? This is a year where you're going to see a lot of experimentation with lineups and who's going to play where. But that's where you start to figure it out. And you say, who is expendable? Who can you move around? And again, this year may not be about the wins. This year may end up just being about combinations and lineups.
Yeah, that's an interesting
That's
point.
funny. That's funny you mentioned that. Real quick, I was just gonna say, I I think the starting lineup we see on opening night against the Magic is not the starting lineup that we'll see in March. I think there will be, like you said, a lot of different combinations to that lineup, and it's going to take some time to see what actually works and who meshes with who.
Yeah, so that it gives Troy, furthermore, kind of like Kobe Altman, the ability to know which picks am I going to flip, and it's not necessarily the ones that do the worst or the ones that do the best, but really the fit. You know, you kind of see what you have, and I'm glad that the Cavs ran it the way that they did, because it gives us a little bit more confidence in what Troy's doing, even if it doesn't look the best. I mean, the Cavs literally added 22 wins in one season. I don't know if their fans believed that they were headed in the right direction or not, but then one by one, they just started to lay on the bricks. You know, they boom, Allen, boom, Mobley, boom, this pick, boom, Donovan Mitchell, because they had those assets. I remember when we began to get a little restless with SVG, and people believed we should just tear this thing down to the studs, do what Philly did, because at least they wound up with Joel Embiid. And I always kind of pushed back at that notion, because I thought there are guys out there who, for better or worse, are finding ways to rebuild these teams, not necessarily on the fly, but the right way, without having to necessarily give up everything, start over, and take forever to hopefully hit on a pick. Like Troy just came in first year, and we talk about this a lot, Rod, first year and got 3 first-round picks. The very first year. You know, like that gives him the ability to take this rebuild and turn it on its head very, 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 very quickly. It's going to be interesting to see all of the different, like Rod said, all of the different lineups, because I want to see who takes the defensive responsibility on themselves. I want to see this year, these guys are saying that they're hungry, and I know that a lot of people talk about their offense and their scoring. I honestly believe offensive-wise, they're going to be an okay team. They're going to be fine. You have Cade leading the point. You have the rest of these guys that are showing offensive ability. Even Killian Hayes, though we would like to see a little bit more of his scoring. Expectation-wise, I'm actually okay with where they're heading off offensively. Now, defensively is the biggest question mark, but I'm not scared of where they are. I just, like Rod said, and you guys have brought up, just have some questions that I'm hoping we see figured out fairly soon. Now, Mike, you brought up something interesting, though. You said that the lineup we see opening night, you're pretty certain that's probably not going to be the one we see in March. What lineup do you believe we do see in March?
Put me on the spot there.
I have to, man. I have to, because look, this is basically, as we get into the season, it's about not necessarily expectations, but trying to quell them, trying to pull things into a succinct place so that we have one path forward that we know we're going to walk.
Yeah, so assuming everyone stays healthy, and that's the biggest factor when it comes to a team and its success long term throughout the course of a season. I'm gonna say Cade for sure. I'm gonna say Sadiq is in that starting lineup for sure. I'm gonna say Bagley finds a way to stay in the starting lineup if he's starting, of course, at the beginning of the season. I'm gonna throw Isaiah Stewart in there, but I could throw Livers in there as well. So you could flip flop either one of those if you move Sadiq to the 4. And then as far as the 2 guard, I think we're gonna see Jaden start at the beginning of the year. Depending on what happens throughout the course of the year, he may have hit a rookie wall. But depending on if he's able to recover from it, I think he'll be able to find himself in that starting lineup by the end of the season.
Oh, that's an interesting take. I didn't think that it was the Jaden Ivey one. That might be the if, but I like how balanced you are, because we've seen that happen. We've seen it happen with other players in the past who they come in, they get the starting responsibilities. They may have to take a step back to just see things from a different angle. But Rod, I'm going to ask you the same question too. By March, who do you think are the starters?
I think they're not on this team. The starters that you'll see in March, maybe there's 1 or 2 who are not on this team currently that by the time they get to that part of the season, the trade deadline will have passed, and they will find another piece that's there. I think this team, like I said, there's going to be a lot of transition within this. I think you see Livers in that mix to be the starting three with Sadiq, and maybe you get just Stewart starting at the 5. But you should very rightfully have Livers in that conversation to be that other guard. And I think it's Cade and Ivy in the backcourt. But I think maybe by the end of the season, you could see Jalen Duren in the starting lineup. I think there's a lot of things that you have to figure out. Maybe the center isn't on isn't on the roster right now. Maybe your eventual power forward isn't on the lineup right now. But I think this is going to be a year of change by the time we get to it, that this roster looks a little bit different than it does right now.
Yep. And I do want to clarify something. I do believe, it just depends on how Jalen Duren plays. Based on what they say he does, I feel like long term, I would love to see what he can do with the 4. So when I stated I don't believe that the center is on the roster right now, like the actual center, my job is just to lock down the paint, is to play tough defense, is to have the backs and all that. From what I've seen from Jalen Duren, I'm getting vibes where this guy can actually be a Sean Kemp type and play a little bit more than just the 5. And so that's, just to clarify, that is definitely what I meant. But, Rod, you bring up some interesting points, because when you look at the roster, there are some decisions that have to be made. I'm not going to be surprised if the Pistons do something crazy. I'm seeing people from other teams, writers, bloggers, and such, content creators. I don't know why, but it seems like Sadiq Bey is somebody that they believe, not that Troy Weaver isn't in love with, but could be a prime candidate to supremely upgrade this team the way that Sexton was used to upgrade the Cavaliers in a trade. But I bring that up just because Isaiah Livers is somebody who I absolutely loved what I saw from him last year. Absolutely. I didn't know what we were going to see with him coming in from Michigan. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if his game was going to translate. I didn't know how. And then we see him go out there, and you're just like, yo, I like everything I saw. It was like exactly what he did at Michigan. He's doing it here. It just absolutely translated. And all these Michigan guys, it seems like whatever they do at college, they come right into the league and they're doing it. I don't know what's in the sauce over there. Shout out Juwan Howard. Shout out Coach Beeline before him. But Isaiah Livers, the love for him, I want to get into that a little bit to be able to get proper expectations there, because in this conversation, I feel like we've set some expectations on Duren. There's fans who think he's going to be coming out ready to go. I believe so, but not necessarily ready to start. I believe we have some guys ahead of him in the pecking order, and Bagley and Stewart, who I like the way that they worked last year. And I believe that Duren, watching from the sidelines to start, since the position he's playing is so complex, it's getting more complex with, the bigs being able to step out and shoot. I think that's the best place for him to start. The guards, I believe it's a little bit easier for a guy like Ivy, because the offensive game and the way that it's called, it caters to him. But with Isaiah Livers, I've gone from believing, he's going to be a solid piece to this rotation, to, he could probably start and spot duties, to, I think I would like to see how he looks just starting. He's not a guy that's going to mess up any flow. And this is something that Rod, mentioned, I think a couple months ago. He's like, he's just a guy you can just play and he's going to do his job. You need him to shoot, he's going to shoot. You need him to play some defense, he's going to play defense. You want him to facilitate just a little from his position. When the ball swings his way, he's going to do that. And it's not like he's looking off his own shots. It's just he has a high basketball IQ, which is something that Troy Weaver, it's an identity of the players that he's brought in. With Isaiah Livers, you guys both mentioned you could see him in the starting lineup. And I'll start with you, Rod. Why is that?
Just from what we saw in Summer League and really toward the end of the year last year, just his court awareness and his basketball IQ of knowing where guys are supposed to be. And the times that I've talked to him, he's always said and frequently said, when he was injured at the beginning of last year, he took that time to look at film, to study, to religiously study what he needed to do, so that when he got healthy and he got back in the lineup, he would know what he didn't want to be behind. So he would know where he was supposed to be and what he was supposed to do. And some guys say that but he did it. He like really did it and jumped in the lineup. When he had to play, he knew where he was supposed to go. He was telling other guys, he was telling vets, and I think we wrote about this or tweeted about this when it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
He's pointing around the court and telling guys who had been playing, you're supposed to be there, go over there, rotate. And so that communication is the foundation of a good defense, of saying, hey, here's the switch that we're calling. I got your guy. Or just instinctively, I don't even have time to tell you, but I'm going to get this guy because he's on the wing and it's a shooter. So I'm going to get him. You just know you have to get my man and hold him for 5 seconds until we can rotate back. He knows that stuff as a rookie. That's impressive enough. But then he's got the size and he's got the shooting ability that you can't keep him off the court. He's just going to find a place and he needs to be on your roster. That's good scouting. But more, that's just good drafting also, to say that guy's going to be there. We know he's talented. We're not going to jump and take him in the first round or anything. We're going to find the right spot in the second round for him. And they did that.
Yeah. And I want to get your thoughts on it as well, Mike, before we get into more conversation on Isaiah Livers.
Yeah, that's a real good point that Rod made. I think that communication factor on the defensive end especially is really significant for a young team, because essentially that makes him a leader on this team. That makes him invaluable. He needs to be on the floor so he can point out mismatches, so he can point out defensive matchups, so he can just be that voice out there, because a lot of young guys, when they get in the league, they're not as vocal as they are initially when they come in. That kind of takes time to develop for them to get comfortable calling out their teammates or just pointing out stuff. So I think that's a really important part of it, but I think he's going to be primarily like a 3-and-D guy. He's going to do his job on the defensive end. We saw in Summer League, he had a couple chase down blocks that he was really excited about. So I think we'll see a little bit of that. And obviously he can shoot the heck out of the ball. We all know that. So if he's open, he's going to take that shot. He's going to be confident in it. And I think that'll be how he earns his time on the floor. Communication, defense, and his 3-point shooting, for sure.
That's awesome. And you said something that we've brought up, and I love to highlight on this show. You talked about how he looked after he was, getting these blocks, chase down blocks, and that he was actually excited about those types of things. That's one of the intrinsic things that I look for in players. I've played ball in high school, middle school, peewee, church league, college, and such. And whenever you're going out there to play basketball with anybody, you're sitting on the sidelines and you wonder who you're going to pick up or what your team is looking like. I feel like all hoopers do this. I didn't know, when I sit down and I watch basketball with other players, they're like, you care about stuff like that? I'm like, yeah, I care about stuff like that. Because when you're going out there to play, you want those guys on your squad. You want to know these guys aren't just cheerleaders, but they're excited about getting after it. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen the guy who sits on the sideline, they're like, yeah, woo, and they're making noise, but they're not really doing anything. These guys are getting excited about going out there and making the right play. And that speaks volumes to the type of player that Isaiah Livers is. Now, I want to bring up his stats just real quick. On the season, 19 games, so it was a small sample size, 6.4 points, 3 rebounds, 1.1 assists, but he made such a big impact really, really, really quickly. And the types of things that he did, and I'm glad that you guys are putting it the way you're doing it right now, is 3-and-D. We can all see, at the very least, that Isaiah Livers is very, very proficient in that, no matter the sample size. To get more into the advanced stats of it all, his true shooting percentage, 62.9%, almost 63%. His 3-point attempt rate, 7-11. Free throw rate was a little low, and that's a given. He rebounded well, assisted well, 8% assist rate, 12.5% rebounds and such. He just overall just a solid player. And that's on 12.4% usage. So he was definitely getting some work in that time. It wasn't like he was just kind of getting in, getting a few minutes and then getting out. Anybody that saw the games knows he was making an impact. And again, setting for the expectation of it all. And I like the fact that your minds kind of saw this, because I don't know sometimes. Like, I'm like, all right, am I drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit on Isaiah Livers? I really believe that this guy has it. Like, I really do. Like, I know the way I felt about Trey Burke, coming out of Michigan, and I'm sad that he didn't really have it. But I promise you guys, this time I really believed it. But I wasn't going to proclaim it until, we hear from a couple of the guys, and by that I mean a solid, at the very least, a solid rotational player. Now, where he goes from there, this is the season of the players for me. In terms of the team expectation, I'm not really looking for huge Cleveland Cavaliers type, 22 win type jump. I believe that the players have the capability. I supremely do. I believe that the GM is sitting back and just, setting his plate. But as it relates to what I believe these guys can do, I believe that the players, man, I can't wait to see it. But I believe Isaiah Livers is one of those guys that's going to prove that I think he's going to prove some other guys expendable. And I've talked about this kind of with my guys off camera. I believe Isaiah Livers is going to throw something definitely more into the plans than any of us expected when he was first drafted here. But I like you guys' comments on Isaiah Livers and this squad. Is there anybody else on this team that you believe will make a step forward or an impact like Isaiah Livers has?
If I had to choose anyone on the roster to kind of make that step or just be someone that fans or reporters aren't expecting, I think I would have to say Kevin Knox. I think Kevin Knox was brought on this team for a reason. Of course, we know that he was in New York. He had his struggles, even as a lottery pick. But I think, and I can only go off what I saw. And the most recent thing that I saw of him playing basketball was in the Rico Hines runs.
Man.
He was shooting the ball pretty well. And I know we can only take that with a grain of salt just because it's a pickup game. But it looks like he was competing out there.
He was out there as Rico Hines KD.
Yeah. So if he's able to come in and knock down a few shots, if he's able to defend at a high level, he has the frame to do so. I think we can expect him to earn a spot in the rotation at least, or at least make it difficult for them not to play. But that's my sleeper pick.
I like that pick. Rob, man, what do you think about that? Kevin Knox. And I want your sleeper pick as well.
No, I think he can be right there. And that's another one of those data points that says you've just got a bunch of guys and they're going to fight for playing spots. They're going to fight for minutes. And he can be in that same discussion. We haven't even talked about Nerlens Noel very much, the same sort of way. Mm-hmm. And what does Alec Burks bring? I mean, we from that guard position, we've talked about the other guys. Those Knicks guys are just sort of sneaky that you don't know what to expect. You know it's going to be veteran depth, and if that's the minimum they can provide, that's cool. But yeah, if they come in and they can give you some production to go along with that, all about it.
No, I like that, man. I like that. And man, I'm looking at Kevin Knox's numbers here now, and it's like the curious case of Kevin Knox. He went, rookie season at 12.8 points per game. 4.5 rebounds, shot it pretty okay, I would say. It wasn't world beater, but he shot it okay from three, shot 34%. Effective field goal 43%. So he was a decent player for them. But he went 12.8, 6.4, 3.9 down to 2 and 3. And we talked about this before, Rod, too. When they first made the trade, we stated, and other people said it too, like, you know what? The Pistons are getting a player in Kevin Knox, man. The Knicks were kind of nixing him. Like, it was whatever the atmosphere, whatever the organization was going through at the time, it did something negative to him. And it wasn't just him. They stated these guys, Alec Burke still has something left in the tank. Nerlens Noel still has something left in the tank. But Kevin Knox was somebody that I heard several other people specifically mention as the Pistons actually getting a player. So that's somebody that we've talked about on this show a couple different times. I don't know what other people are thinking that they're going to get. But I believe we see a step forward, depending on the time he gets and based on the way this offense goes, based on the atmosphere, based on the camaraderie, based on who's leading this team and Cade Cunningham. I do believe that with ample time, with if he's in the bench rotation, we can see him be a guy that, similar to Isaiah Livers, can be a nice 3-and-D type player. I don't know if he's necessarily going to have the type of season that can make somebody expendable. I don't necessarily know that. But I do believe we're going to get a little bit more than what fans are thinking. With Nerlens Noel, I know health is going to be the big thing. When he plays, he wrecks. That's just what happens. With Alec Burks, I believe he's going to be a good veteran presence, a good three-point shooter for this squad. And I'm really excited about what the Knicks guys can bring, because I believe how they go is going to be what the Pistons season is. I do know that these younger players, they have the ability to come and make certain impacts, but I'm kind of already saying or putting them in their one spot and believing that these veteran Knick players who are they don't have to learn the game. They get the ability to kind of stay the ship, so to speak, in the first half of the season. While the young players are learning, getting their feet wet, you got practice battles that I want during going up against a guy like Nerlens Noel. I want that. I want Stu going up against guards like Jaden Ivey, seeing, hey, how you guard the perimeter. What if you get switched out here? I want these types of battles, but I also want him. I want to see guys like Sadiq Bey having to chase around a guy like Kevin Knox. You know, Sadiq Bey, I know he slimmed down a little bit. I believe that is to not necessarily be a little bit more versatile offensively, but to be a little bit more versatile defensively. With the way that these guys work, though, I'm so glad that you brought up, Rod, Isaiah Livers' mind, because it reminds me of everything you wrote about Sadiq Bey. These guys want it themselves. Like, more so than what the team is putting before them, this team wants it themselves. Now, Rod, did you give me your sleeper pick?
No, I'm going to say Isaiah Stewart is my sleeper guy. That he'll be a little under the radar of what people are expecting, but I think he's really going to turn it up this year.
Yep. Isaiah, with Isaiah Stewart, the one thing that I've continued to kind of lament is the inability to consistently get the double-double. It just seems like he falls. If he gets to 10 points, you can bank on him getting 9 rebounds. You know, if he gets to 10 rebounds, you can bank on him getting 9 points. You know, is that – and I just wanted to get you guys' perspective. Is that technique? Is it opportunity? What are you seeing here as it relates? Because I know his career averages are just underneath that. Last year, he was at 8.3 points, 8.7 rebounds. What are you seeing that seems to keep him just shy of being able to be that guy that averages a double-double? And do you believe this is the season where he takes that step forward?
I think it is. That's why I'm saying him. But I think it's based on opportunity, and you're not getting the ball with Cade, with Jeremy last year. They're not calling plays for you. You have to Dennis Rodman your way to a double-double.
Oh, the
Rodman
is probably the offense.
Yeah, it is. You have to. The points are always going to be harder to come by for him. The rebounds generally aren't the issue. It's generally the points. And if he's active offensively, it generally means he's going to have a little bit more trouble getting those offensive rebounds. So he's away from the basket typically, if that's the case. So some of those offensive rebounds, some of those numbers, I think are going to balance out this year, and he'll be. I think he'll be a double-double guy this year. That's what I see the upside for him to be. But yeah, with Cade, with Sadiq, now with Ivy, with all of these guys, he's not seeing the ball unless he's like in that Andre Drummond 3. If they and Dwayne Casey used to talk about, hey, if they step back and they disrespect you and they give you that 3, then take the 3.
Then take it.
Yeah, and he'll take it, but I think it's more he's going to have to be a little bit more aggressive in finding that 3, making defenses jump out at him a little bit more, and he has ability to put the ball on the court and create something off the dribble too.
That's the underrated aspect of his game. There, people keep talking about he's adding a 3. It's like, well, he showed us a 3 last year, and we looked at the numbers. Man, second half Isaiah Stewart with those 3s, especially like those last 10 games, was crazy. He wasn't missing. It was like the percentage was something crazy. But his ability to put the ball on the floor and get to the basket or get into that mid-range or make another pass, which is something I think that's one of his most underrated perspectives of his game, is I've seen B. Stu make good interior passes and good passes in the middle, not just to the shooters, but to guys cutting. Like, again, that basketball IQ. As he expands his offensive game, I can't wait to see exactly what he becomes on the offensive side. And you're right, the opportunities necessarily haven't been there, but I believe the specific additions he's adding to his game, 3-point shot, if he can capitalize more on getting to the rim or putting the ball on the floor, and if he can get a pet move in the post, I believe that the opportunities don't necessarily need to be there. As he hones in a little bit more defensive on the rebounds, the double-doubles are going to be there very, very, very easily for B. Stu. I picked him last year to finally, to average that double-double early in his career, but I believe this is the season. I'm interested to see what type of step forward he takes defensively, if it's going to be more so where we see a huge jump or a stable jump in the perimeter aspect of his game. If that's just kind of a what he does if he's called into it, or if they actually run some sets where he's able to blow some things up defensively from the middle or the top of the key. So it'll be interesting. But Mike, what do you think here about Isaiah Stewart in this season ahead for him?
Yeah, I think he's gonna be pretty successful this year. When you look at a guy who's pretty much the defensive anchor of the Pistons, I think he has what it takes to take it to that next level, as Rob was saying. I think why he hasn't gotten an opportunity to kind of average that double-double, like you said, like it's hard to average a double-double, let alone a triple-double, is what we saw from Russell Westbrook for, 3 seasons in a row. And I think that his opportunities to grab those rebounds, why you say he always has gets to that 9 mark, because those guards are flying around and grabbing all those rebounds, especially the long ones. You got a guy like Cade who can get you 5 rebounds. I think Ivy can do the same at some point. And then you got Sadiq who can also rebound the ball efficiently as well. And then you got your bigs down there in Marvin Bagley. So rebounds are pretty spread out throughout the team. That's why I think sometimes he comes up short with the double-doubles. But like Rod said, with his offensive opportunities, those are coming off, I don't want to say garbage time, but he has to scrap and grab offensive rebounds, try to lay the ball back, try to dunk it. He can get lobs. I think that's something that we'll probably see pretty a little bit more this season, just in certain pick and roll situations, because you can throw a guy like Ivy who can facilitate that. Cade can facilitate that. We know Killian can as well. He's a really good passer. So I think we'll see him get more opportunity this season, just for the simple fact that he's expanding his game more. And like you said, he can put it on the floor too, not just be able to shoot the 3. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does this season. And we'll see if it ends up benefiting the Pistons long term.
Yeah, and I like that. You brought up some key points here, man. One of them being the team rebounding. And when I look at it here, you're right. It's completely spread out, and it looks like a perfect bell curve. It really does. Yeah, these guys are really getting after it, trying to rebound. A lot of these guys were sitting right about the 5 rebound per game mark, whether it be about 4.8 to 5.4 rebounds per game from Sadiq at 5.4. Even Derek Walton was at 3.3. It's interesting you say that, because when Andre Drummond was here, it seemed like the game plan was everybody run, just let him get the rebound. And obviously he's naturally gifted. He has the size, he has the leaping ability, he has that double jump, that quick double jump. So he's going to already get his 10 rebounds, 12 rebounds a game off of things like that alone. But I never really quite got with that notion. I grew up in the school of, man, that ball is up in the air. Everybody box out at least your player and watch the ball fall in the middle of the court for any of you guys to get it. So if your center's going to get it, at least defensively, you guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing, and principally you're sound. I didn't really see that out of the Drummond era Pistons. You bring up a point that now makes me believe more than I did before. You aren't just prepared. You're thoroughly prepared, like Rod said. Who knows that the whole team rebounding went up like that, like across the board, that it's just completely spread out. I know we look at these guys individually and break them down, but you're like, nah, the whole team is coming for his plate. It's no longer the Drummond era where I remember they told a story. Reggie Jackson was like, nah, man, Andre Drummond told me, if you grab my rebound, I'm going to hit you in the mouth. So we just run down the court. I'm like, I don't think Isaiah Stewart is doing that. What'd you say, Rod?
That's his thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, guys make their living.
Yeah, all these guys, man. Cade and Sadiq averaging 5.5 rebounds a game. Jeremy was at 4, and that was a step up for him. Marvin Bagley was at 6.8. Isaiah Stewart, 8.7. Killian Hayes, 3.2. Kojo, so for even Hami, 4.8. Braxton Key got in there, 5.3. Olenek, like, these guys were really, really getting after it on the board. And it bodes well for this team. I think what it really speaks to is their ability to get the ball. And they have a lot of different players who can either make the full court pass, make the correct outlet pass, or just go. So it makes it fun. There is no concept of, well, I'm the point guard, wait for me. I even see Killian. If K got the ball, that boy takes off and gets down the court like he's about to receive the pass. Where in his first year, I didn't see Killian do that. When the ball came off, he stood literally in the backcourt waiting for it. Like, here I go, just to get above half court and then literally give it back to Blake Griffin. You know, what I saw last year was the ball come off the rim and these guys went, and we saw some exciting plays. Some really, really exciting plays from Cade, from Sadiq, from Killian, from guys getting these monster dunks. Isn't last year the year where we saw Killian getting a couple of those monster dunks off fast breaks, or these guys getting handsy off the inbound passes of the opposing team? And I think Killian, you brought it up, Rod, on one of these previous podcasts, that Killian had one of those nasty two-hand dunks that all of us was like, what? He can do that? He can do that. He can do that. So I hope from an expectation standpoint that this team message, because based on the stats, it looks like the team message is everybody hit the glass. Everybody hit the board, but do it in a defensively sound way so you're not just, obviously giving up second chance points or long rebounds on three-pointers. And I like the way this team plays. They're trying to look for each other. They're trying to fill the lanes. They're trying to get out and run. And they're trying to make sure that they get the ball. So that for me, personally, I'm glad that you guys brought this up, because I've been scratching my head on it a little bit. I've been sitting here looking at it like, man, in our Pistons over-under competition, shout out to JD Sports Tweets, and we're going to be doing that again this year. A lot of us picked Stu to get that double-double, to average it finally this year. I think more so than opportunity. I think technique. I think he's learning to rebound a little bit better. His numbers were better at the end of last season, rebounding and three-point wise. So that would be a good step forward for him. I actually like the fact that we talked about Beef Stew a little bit more. We've covered him before, and that we actually talked about Kevin Knox. These are two guys that I wanted to actually, and we're going to do this on the next one, talk about Marvin Bagley and Hamidou Diallo, because I believe that they're two people that we don't really forget about Marvin Bagley, but how much are we talking about Hamidou? Anybody really? And the impact that he may or may not have. I saw him in those Rico Hines runs, a few clips, and I'm like, he looks like a guy that's hungry. He looks like a guy that's like, why is everybody talking about Jay and Ivy? I know he's sweet and all, but I mean, I'm still here type of thing. And not that there's not expectation, not that we don't look at it and see the perspective, not that he can't see the perspective, but he doesn't look like a guy who's just throwing in a towel. Like, all right, well, my career is just to be relegated to this role forever. He looked like a guy that's really coming out here and is going to make a difference. And he's one of those guys, like we talk about with Kevin Knox, that I believe might be able to make a really nice impact that we're not really expecting on this team. So going ahead, I definitely want to have the conversations about them, but I'm glad that the players brought up were the ones that were. We covered Isaiah Stewart a couple weeks ago, and Rod, these points that you brought to the table were key, as well as you, Mike. And that's the reason why we like to rap with guys like you all. It brings something just a little bit better, a little bit more depth, a little bit more knowledge to the conversation, which is what today was about. We want to make sure that Pistons-wise, we got these expectations met. I know the conversation with the Cavs and everything that they've done has then brought out a new conversation with the Pistons, and if they're going to be better or worse, if they're doing the right things. People are waking up to an Eastern Conference. Like when we started this rebuild, when Troy got here, I wasn't looking at this Eastern Conference the way that I am today. I thought that the Eastern Conference had a few pieces, but that largely it was something that if with a few tweaks we can get in there. I mean, with a few tweaks, we saw the Pistons make the playoffs a few years ago. You see what I'm saying? This East now, the way that teams are running it now, I'm just like, everybody's smart. You know what I mean? All these teams at the top are making some very, very shrewd moves, some very, very wise moves, and it's just putting them in position to have some longevity and success. So it's an interesting thing. You know, it'd be cool to see what these Piston players do. It'd be cool to see what assets they become for Troy Weaver. And Rod, I'm hoping what you suggested, man, that nuclear option, man, where there's a couple pieces that are flying off the shelves and a couple new starters. I'm hoping for that, man. Part of me, I'm hoping for it. We talked about it going into the draft. Everybody was pseudo depressed, and we were like, guys, chill. Nobody is going to be surprised if they come away with 2 first-round picks. And we even talked about it. We said, look, we already know Troy's going to possibly do that. That's what this team is going to do. He's not sitting around resting on his laurels, though he's also not moving at the pace we think he should. So it's, hey, you know, this is my soliloquy as we bring it to an end. You know, any last words from you, gentlemen? Rod, Mike?
No, man, just thanks for having Mike on, because that's I think it's important for him to become a voice in all of this too. And
Yes.
and though he hasn't been to a game, you can see that he's studied up already and he's prepared for what the season is going to bring. And everybody should be excited about the season, but I'm excited to see what Mike brings.
Yep. Mike, look, man, this is a pleasure, man, to have you on. I'm hoping to have you on as much as we can. Definitely. It's awesome to be able to talk to, you know, another basketball mind. Jeff and I, we sit and we giggle like little school kids, like, man, we get to talk to Rod about basketball, and he's actually bringing heat. It's not just, you know, we're not just talking. It's awesome. So to enter in another mind like that and to know, you know, filling the shoes or coming beyond the path that Rod has left, it's awesome knowing we're getting somebody who's coming from that same degree of workmanship, professionality, thoroughness, research from our beat writer. That's what we want to see. So I look forward to it. But any last words from you, Mike?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity coming on with you guys. It definitely won't be the last time. And maybe throughout the season, hopefully I'm able to bring some of my reporting knowledge to the show. I think that's the one thing that I really want to add, just so I'm not just speaking from my head and speaking from my observations. Once I talk to a little bit more people and get a little bit more insight, I think I'll be able to add a little bit more to the show. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Hey, brother, you're speaking to the choir right now, man. You really are. Because like I said, I love basketball, man. And when people start to talk and you can just get engrossed or lost in it, that's when it feels the best, man. So I'm grateful for you. Rod, as always, grateful for you. For Mr. Everything, Jeff Freddie. Hey, you guys, make sure you tune into everything he's involved in. Jeff and Gentry podcast, the Morning Woodward show, From Half Court with my brother, Sean Murphy. Listen, tune into everything that these guys are doing. Support what they're doing. They're good guys who are just grinding it out. Jeff is knowledgeable. He's hungry, and he's trying to bring as much positive content as possible. I support these brothers, support everything that Woodward Sports is trying to do. And, hey, look, you guys, Pistons season is coming up, and we're going to have some exciting things for you. I can't wait. And, Mike, I can't wait to have you on more. Rod, we're not letting you off the hook, bro. Hey, Mike, man, you got to help me do this drum roll as we log off, man. Let's get it. Hey, yo, for the Legend Detroit News, Rod Beard. Thank you, sir. And I appreciate you, gentlemen. Hey, till next time. So Woodward Pistons.